So, on this week's episode, I had the distinct pleasure of speaking with Sarah Moore on her incredible journey from Army helicopters to the Iditarod Trail to Nepal. This is a story of her journey of health, wellness, and quite frankly, true resilience. Sarah is now working through the modality of yoga and other ways to help first responders overcome their own post traumatic stress. Give this one a listen, and you're going to be fascinated literally by the first 10 minutes to hear about Sarah's trail and journey literally coming off the Iditarod Trail. Might be a slight stretch there, but you're going to have to tune in to find out more.
Welcome to Yoga for First Responders on Air, where we break down yoga, neuroscience, resilience, and public safety in a manner that's authentic, educational, and most importantly, entertaining and lighthearted. I'm YFFR's founder, Olivia Mead. As a yoga instructor and neuroscience enthusiast, I'm passionate about supporting first responders and anyone looking to improve their overall human performance. Each week, we'll dive into a new topic and often bring on expert guests to share their insights and experiences. But we'll also keep it real and share our own stories and struggles along the way. So whether you're a first responder or seeking to master the science of mental and physical resilience, this podcast is your ultimate guide to triumph over life's challenges with unbreakable strength and unwavering fortitude. By pressing play, your training has begun.
I'm just fascinated by you, by your story, quite frankly. And this is why I just start hitting record, because I start just like pulling questions out of people right away.
Yeah.
You've been, you literally emailed us from the Iditarod Trail. Like, I've always had this fascination and with the Iditarod for some reason. Like, I don't know. I remember being a kid, like just fascinated about that. So were you like doing the race? Were you like just doing a trek on the trail? Like, what was going on there?
So this was something that one of my military veteran friends has done for the past, like, I don't know how many years. So basically she was Army with me. And then she was like, I'm done with the Army. Like a lot of us are. Peace out. I'm moving to Alaska. so she becomes a vet tech and gets involved with the Iditarod from there. Okay. And ever since then, she knows that like I will go on any adventure out there, and I love huskies. And so she's like, you have to come volunteer for this Iditarod. We're on the Canine drug testing team. And so we're there to make sure that we are like fully supporting the health and safety of the dogs, the integrity of the race, and, like just making sure like everything goes really smoothly. And it's so funny because I'm like, that's such a law enforcement thing. Like, let's just go ahead and do drug tests on all the time. So I'm like, I'm your girl. I can do this.
I'm there.
Yeah. So anyways, it was like my own personal adventure this year. Like I had just retired from the military last year. I left the Federal Air Marshal Service. I have started my own business, and I'm like, you know what? I need something for me, and this is just perfect. So I was up there. We did the whole trail, and we were just kind of like, our team was kind of leapfrogging along, and we just, random drug tests, like, hey, guess what? You're selected. And so much fun. So we were there from the very start up until the very end, like when the first finishers arrived at Nome. And such a cool experience, and we got to see the whole thing. And now like the wheels are spinning in my head because I'm like, all right, how can I bring other veterans and first responders on this? Totally. Because it's such a perfect job for them. So
yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, like the fascination of the Iditarod Trail for some reason, it's just kind of like that last bastion of like the wild, wild west, almost like people going out in the wilderness, being like on sleds with dogs. Like, it's just like, there's just this vision of like the last great wilderness.
Well, that's what they call it. They call it the last great race. Like that's the name, like it's subnamed to the Iditarod. And it's so true. Like it's so crazy. There was one of the mushers out there who like literally punched a moose in the face because it was like almost going on them. And then the other guy that came through, Dallas Seavey, who ended up winning, he actually had to kill the moose. And when that because it hit one of his dogs, like it kicked one of his dogs and injured it. So the dog had to get evac'd out and was in critical condition for a while. He per race rules, if you kill a game animal, you have to dress it. So he's dressing the thing on the like. It's wild. It's
It's
wild.
insane.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally. Well, and that's I mean, I love it. I love every aspect of it. Uh, Minus being cold. Like I'm done being cold. I won't lie. Like in my life, not that I can't handle the cold. I mean, I was a firefighter in the Midwest for my first career, so it was on the interstates, freezing my ass off at like negative 20 degrees, in turnout gear. But I don't know. But I know it's all also clothes and preparation at some point. Like the clothes are warm, but at some point you just got to be cold. And like I'm over being
Yeah.
cold.
So I am that way too. I will like hang out in the mountains all day long, but like negative 40 was a brand new adventure for me. And
Right.
so, but it was like I dressed so well that like my body was fine. It was just extremities and just the nature of the work we do. Like we're
Right.
dealing with dogs. And so, we're not going up to them with like giant gloves on. So and we weren't out all of the time. So I think like the max time that we're out is about 20 minutes.
Sure.
Doing our, testing and samples on the dogs, and then we get to go inside, which is nice. So
That's
it's,
fair. That's fair.
yeah.
Yeah. What a great introductory story to this episode, honestly. So we were saying before we started that it's such a pleasure to meet you. We've kind of been like unbeknownst to me. So I'm on a solo episode today. For those that are used to seeing Olivia and Eric on this podcast episode, solo episode today. Olivia's covering some other duties within the organization, and quite frankly, she's terribly sick. So she would sound terrible on this podcast, and nobody wants to listen to it for now into eternity. So we made the executive decision that it's going to be back to a solo episode. So Sarah, you just have to deal with me today. So you're welcome, and/or I'm sorry. Either
we'll
way.
make it work.
Yeah, we'll make it work. But I'm so excited to have you on the show. Your resume is fantastic, quite frankly. I mean, it's amazing. I'm excited about what you're doing through Blue Side Yoga and the expeditions and the treks, and so we'll definitely talk into that because your website just talks so absolutely the similar message and mission as to what we have here at Yoga for First Responders. And I know that you actually had tried to bring us into one of your organizations in the past. And so if you don't mind, introduce yourself, give a little bit of that background and resume. I know you kind of touched on a little bit in that first introduction. You've got a powerful story as to how you came to be where you are today. So we'll touch on all those threads over the next hour. Very loose conversation. I appreciate having you on the show. I'm just going to start that because I'm looking forward to this, especially, like I said, coming straight off the Iditarod Trail. So fascinating to me. So, tell us a little bit about who you are and what is Sarah? Who is Sarah?
Sure. So I am somebody that joined the military as soon as 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
And I just continued on this path that ended up being a full 21 year career, and just retired last year out of it. But through that whole journey in the military, my first job was a fuel truck driver, as I was an enlisted person. It was one of those things where it was like
fairly straight out of high school. Like
I did.
A fairly young person at that point. Yeah.
Well, I enlisted at 19. So I was in my first semester of college, and that's when 9/11 happened. And so after that, I was like,
so the military was your first only career. So and I point that out because obviously a lot of first responders start very young too, and it's oftentimes their first careers, and that has an impact on how we grow, how we age, how we deal with the stress and trauma. So just wanted, working back on timelines, I was just kind of making sure that my timeline was correct. You started as a young adult.
I did. Yeah. I jumped right into it at 19, and it was kind of a crazy path. And I was, first year of college, kind of lost on what I wanted to do. And it was like, as soon as 9/11 happened, it was this calling that I had. And it just, continued from there into just so many different roads that I went down. But yeah, I started enlisted, and then I did a short deployment because the war kicked off right away. Right. Went back to college because I knew from there Army was going to be part of me. So I also have a really strong family history of aviation. So I commissioned, I went to flight school, I became an air assault pilot, I fly UH-60 Blackhawks, and from there, my career just stayed in aviation in various different, deployments and different assignments, such like that for, the next 15 years of my career.
Yeah.
And then I finished up my Army career in the Army Reserve, working with UAVs. And so that was kind of a
Okay.
fun way to, you know, the whole aviation package that I had. It was kind of fun.
I'll tell you what. So, to go from truck driver to Black Hawk pilot to UAV, were you piloting the UAVs as well?
I was not. So I was in a senior leadership role at that point, and what I did was my very small team. We oversaw the manufacturing of one
Mm,
of the UAVs,
yeah.
and we were basically the DoD or the Army representative because it was an Army asset that they were building to make sure that they were delivering and building it to the standards that the Army needed. So
Yeah.
kind of like an auditor. Well, it definitely was auditing, but it was like people aren't really happy when I showed up because they
Right.
knew they knew inspections were about to happen. So, but we had
Yeah.
fun and we made it
Totally.
work.
Totally. Isn't that the like kind of like the kick in the shins of like these careers though? Like, is it like because like it's the same thing in the fire service, right? And Olivia reminds me of this often is that I ended up leaving the fire service after 13 years in, kind of top of the game. Was company officer, and my next step up was going to be promoted up to at some point, not like immediately, but at some point up into like a battalion chief level, more of a desk type job. But the higher up we go, the longer we're in these careers, the further away we seem to get from the initial reason why we got into the jobs in the first place, right? And so, I mean, when you join the army, you're like, you never in your wildest dreams you're like, I, Sarah, am going to be an auditor of drone manufacturers. Like that was not how you played that out, I would imagine.
Nope, definitely not. And I love that you just mentioned like what your original purpose is because at
Yeah,
that point where I basically like ranked out of flying helicopters, I was like, I'm so mission oriented and I
right.
love the tactics and the operations and all that stuff. I was like, my soul is not being actually, I feel like my soul is being sucked away, but I'm so
Absolutely.
close to retiring, I can't stop right now. So
Mm,
that's when
yeah,
I left active duty side of it. I was AGR, I was with the Guard for a long time. And for your listeners that know what AGR is, it's the active Guard Reserve. So it's
yeah,
the active component of that side. So I was doing that for a long time, and I was like, my soul is being sucked out because this is not what I want to do anymore.
for
But
sure.
being so close, I'm like, I have to finish that career. So that's when I left AGR and went to the Air Marshal Service and became a flying air marshal because that went back to my original 9/11. Like,
Yeah,
I'm here to make sure airplanes aren't used as weapons. I love the mission. I love the tactics. I love working in a really close, small team.
right.
Um, and so like that started to fulfill my soul again of like, okay, I have this mission, but I still have, the other side of the army to complete. So it
Absolutely.
was it was full circle for me with that.
Totally. And the way how you said that was super powerful is that as I ranked up and ranked out of flying helicopters, it almost felt like my soul was getting sucked out of me. I think that so many of our people in public safety would probably recognize that as you do rank up, I mean, golly, but everybody like the line people love to hate on the brass, like, because they're like, oh, they've all lost their way. But I'm not sure if they've truly lost their way, but like maybe at some point it really is. For some reason, I've really been revolving around this sense of identity lately. It just seems to be a thread that comes up in a lot of the conversations is that they may not be changing, but they've lost sense of their identity and their purpose from what they originally signed up for, and therefore impacts every decision they make because they're like, oh, I'm just sitting at the desk, or I'm not fulfilling what I was originally here for. And so I think there's kind of that interesting dynamic between those. Uh, Now, when it comes to the UAVs, so we worked with the Iowa Air National Guard
Okay.
for a while, and we've got some great connections there, and they were piloting the drones. And what something that really struck me and from that was the fact that like as soon as they walked through the threshold of the door into like the piloting room, they're actually technically in a forward operating position, and they'd walk on the other side of the threshold, and then they'd literally be back home in wherever their base was at. And so it's just that kind of immediate transition back and forth. And so to deal with that identity shift daily and go home and like be flying drone missions where we all know kind of what happens in those. And then they go home and have to give their wife a hug or husband a hug and kiss and their kids and whatnot, or pick them up from school on the way home from being forwardly operated. It's just fascinating world in the UAV world. So amazing, amazing stuff. And then actually, Olivia and I just moved to New Mexico. Some people know that, some people don't. One of our first trips to New Mexico was actually down at an Air Force base in southern New Mexico, working with the fire service on the Air Force base and they were a UAV base down south of here. So there's some pictures out there somewhere of us doing some yoga in front of the UAVs, and that was pretty cool, actually.
Oh, I love that combination. That's awesome.
Yeah, super cool, super cool. Yeah, and so you've mentioned the agency you're with, and that agency, like we were kind of, you guys were kind of courting us for a little bit, and we never really were able to get it to the finish line, unfortunately, yet. I will never say that we'll never get it to the finish line, but you were a key component into that. You weren't
Yeah.
necessarily working with me, working with other folks on our team. So I'm curious how you first came across yoga for first responders in that position, in that role, and kind of how that story evolved a little bit.
So when I was with the Air Marshal Service, I had become it's a CERT program, Critical Incident Peer Responders. It's some acronym similar to that. It's been a few years since I've been removed from it.
That's
But
fair.
basically, we are the
By the
ones
way,
that,
for those that aren't watching on YouTube or live, well, no, we're not doing this live, but those who aren't watching on YouTube, you need to go to YouTube and check out Sarah's nails because they're fucking cool. I won't lie. I mean, every time your hands move up, like I'm digging that color. So
I lived in Jersey for a long time, so I talk with my hands a lot. But
I do too.
that was that was also one of my goals when I left having to wear a uniform every day. I was like, I will forever have wild nails because it's been 21 years of having to conform to
listen,
the
it's the
uniform.
reason I have a beard now. I couldn't have facial hair for my entire adult life, and so I was like, that's the one thing I'm going to take control of and actually try that out. So I appreciate
Yeah.
it, but I just wanted to compliment them. Like I love
Oh,
the color.
thank you.
I love the color.
Thank you.
So,
I
yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah. So anyway, I didn't mean to derail the conversation.
No, it's all good. So going back to there's a peer responder group that the Air Marshals have. And we're basically the ones and I love this program because here's the thing. We all know that one of the big problems with military and first responder personnel is how do we get help? And what does that look like? So if someone says, hey, you need to talk to somebody or you need to get some mental health help, or I just decide as an Air Marshal myself or whatever organization has this, like, I need to talk to somebody and I'm not quite comfortable going to the whole mental health route yet. So this group of people that I'm with are specially trained to work with our peers and discuss the big issues that happen and, how can we get them help? Let me give you some options, that sort of thing. And so, of course, that was just a natural fit for me because, I know how beneficial yoga is. I have gotten mental health help myself. Like, just to be part of that sort of conversation with somebody and start to guide them down the right path or give them some options was really important to me. So as I got into that group some more, there was another option through the Air Marshal Service where we have working groups that bring new things to the agency.
Sure.
And so when I did this, I was like, I see such a benefit to yoga and what it does with the mental health and teaching neuroscience and all of the stuff. And I was like, well, I know that as an internal employee, I can't do this, but let me start searching nonprofits because I'm sure there's got to be something out there. And that's how I came across your organization. And so I reached out and I knew that you were taking on bigger projects and bigger clients. And I was like, this would be such a perfect match because to get this involved with the Air Marshal Service at our National Training Center for our new academy attendees and new Air Marshals, like they need to learn all of this stuff before it gets to the point where I need mental health help. Like it just boggles my mind that with all of this information and science and all this is out there and we still can't get this done in organizations as your basic intro to learn about neuroscience and what our jobs are going to do to us.
Right. It's almost like we're afraid. It's almost like we're afraid. Like I'm going to be a bit bold here, but it's almost like leadership's a little bit afraid to let the cat out of the bag, so to speak. Like, oh, by the way, you're going to come into fire service, law enforcement, military, EMS, whatever it is, public safety, broad strokes, right? And it's the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room that it's going to affect your body, mind, and nervous system. Oh, but by the way, we're going to keep that hidden. So you still think you're coming in to be like the folks on the TV shows, it's all about the glory, and that kind of stuff, rather than having the real conversations like this job will impact you like at every single level of your cellular being. But the good news is that there are ways that we can combat this and get you proactively trained. And this is one of your messages as well, is like, we can train you to be prepared for what it's going to do to your body, mind, and nervous system. But
right.
So far, we're kind of keeping that tucked away. Like, oh no, it's not. This job's great. Everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be glorious. Oh, by the way, like that, maybe that's not the case, but just as we continue to work this mission, my God, that's what it feels like. It's like, you would think leadership and people around the industry would be like, no, let's address this. Let's bring in proactive training. And it's changing, but that's still a tough fight, man. Like it's a hard battle.
It's so slow and it's not a priority. And it's exactly what happened when the program didn't get onboarded. We had a lot of immediate support and senior leader support, but outside of that working group to get it, propelled up to the next level with budgets and all that kind of stuff, it just kind of like DOA, like I was so disappointed to hear that. And then the other thing with all of this and how important this training is, and especially in the law enforcement world, is we talk about de-escalation. So we need to de-escalate a situation that's going on, right? And that's the difference between life and death for whatever that situation is going on. In the world that I come from, it's de-escalating what's going on the airplane. I don't have backup coming. It's, like, we need to learn how to do this stuff. So if I am running on a high stress nervous system stuck on high, and I can't control that because of, my career, or I haven't learned what my nervous system is doing, how are we expected to de-escalate the situation and help calm somebody down in order to not make it a life and death scenario? And so even if we just sell it at that point, like, what I would think that any police department, law enforcement, first responder, all of that stuff, like, just
yeah,
like,
right. I know.
Why is that not a selling point?
I know, 100%. And we get the comments like, oh, you do know that like the DOJ and federal, there's so many grants and fund mechanisms out there for de-escalation tactics and strategies and that kind of stuff. But for some reason, I don't think people have translated, and maybe this is our job. We have to do a better job marketing in this, and I'll take ownership on that. Is exactly what you just said. If we don't train our own nervous systems to de-escalate itself, how in the world can we possibly learn to de-escalate somebody else, right? I mean, you just said that. That's a powerful, powerful phrase, and it's our job to show that we do have tools that can do that. Like, it's making that connection to people, because you're in the yoga space at this point, fully. Feet stepped in. Your business is called Blue Side Yoga, and so and have to fight all the misconceptions of what yoga is, right? And what more importantly, like, what yoga is not. It's and all of that garbage that goes along with it. And so, full disclosure, we've been told many, many times by leadership and whatnot, like, you should all change the name of what you do. Like, you should change the name of your business. It would make it more palatable to people. And we've pushed back on that a little bit, because not a little bit, a lot. Obviously, we're still yoga for first responders, so we didn't change the name of it. But I tell these chiefs when they tell me that, or these marketing folks, it's like, law enforcement, public safety, these folks are highly skeptical to begin with, number one. And so I either have to fight the fight on the front end or fight the fight on the back end. If I call this like super badass de-escalation training that everybody's going to love, like, that's going to be the name of our program going forward. And then I bring these folks in and run them through a yoga class. They're going to be like, well, what the fuck was that? I didn't sign up for yoga class. I signed up for super badass de-escalation training that everybody's going to love, So then I'm basically the mom or the dad sprinkling the broccoli and the brownies, which every kid hates, but parents do it anyway, because you got to eat your vegetables. And so it's like I either got to fight the fight on the front end, and so people know what they're signing up for, and make the translation as to what yoga is and what yoga is not, or get them to sign up for it and then feel like they were lied to and burn the bridge on the and try to repair the bridge on the back end. So I personally would rather fight the fight on the front end and slowly make that change. And so you've stepped yourself fully in the yoga world. You're blue side yoga at this point. So like, how are you navigating those waters?
So I had the same exact thing and a really similar conversation with someone because they're like, why don't you make it blue side adventure? You'll get more people interested. And I'm like, because yoga is part of what we do. And like I said, like, I don't want any surprises. We're going to do yoga on the trail. We're going to do yoga in our program leading up to it. But the difference is you're going to learn why yoga works and why you need it. And not just, oh, well, we're just going to eat granola and sit in the mountains and do yoga. Like, no, that's not, that's not what we're about. But I love what you just said. And I wanted to go back to this because I first started getting, so I'd always been a believer in yoga because this was, oh my gosh, I can't even remember the year by this point. I think it was about 2009, 2010. I had just gotten back from a combat deployment. And one of my fear things in myself is water. Like I didn't join the Navy. I'm an Army land dweller and I like being in the sky. Like water is not my jam. So I had a lot of stuff going on in my life. I didn't know how to deal with post-deployment stress. I was in a really abusive marriage at the time, and we just didn't know where to go with life at that point. So it was that stress. It was the stress of like, I had nowhere to live, but I was like mooching off of people to live because we didn't have like a solid place because we had just gotten back from deployment. The Army sent me to another school. Like everything was kind of crazy. So then I had to do this dunker exercise, and it's where you sit in a helicopter and it simulates that you've just crash landed in water. And so it sinks in water, and then at a certain point it flips over and then it sinks to the bottom and then you have to escape. Like it's just not a pleasant experience.
No, I've seen these videos on YouTube of folks like you going through this exercise, and quite frankly, it looks awful. Like it looks terrible.
And you don't just do it once, you have to do it like 10 times to pass the course. Like it's awful. So I'm going through it. My nervous system, this is me speaking of what I know about my nervous system now, not then. Right. But I was under so much stress. I came up from one of these exercises and my body was just completely shaking, like uncontrollably shaking. And I'm trying to tell myself of like, stop. Like what is going on? And what I didn't know is like, I was having a nervous panic attack. My anxiety was just like, that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And from there, like I couldn't finish training, and then I had to go talk to, Army psychiatrists. And then it was like, my career might be threatened, like all the kind of stuff that goes through.
Of course.
And thankfully it all worked out. But that was the precursor to my yoga journey.
Oh,
because
that happened first. So you were not doing yoga yet at that point. Okay.
No. Yeah. And so this was about 8 years into my Army career. And I went, and finally I was the VA, or not the VA, the Army doctors wanted to throw pills at me. And I was like, not an option for me. I'm going to go back to flying. I will work through this and all, that sort of stuff. And I had paid to go to my own doctor to see what was going on. And they suggested yoga. So I'm like, cool, I'll jump into yoga. And about a month into it, I'm like, this has saved my life. Literally saved my life, because I could feel myself going down that spiral that we see our brothers and sisters go down, where it's unhealthy coping mechanisms. You don't know what's going on. And I call it the drain of despair, because one thing just keeps leading to another, to another, to another. And so that was my journey into yoga. And so fast forward a little bit, I'm in grad school, and there's this class called decision-making in stressful environments. And I'm like, I'm a decision maker in stressful environments. Like, let me take this. Like this is going to make life. Like I'm going to be a general someday. Like I'm going to make really stressful decisions. And it turned out to be a neuroscience-backed course on mindfulness and meditation. And it was one of those things where I'm like, I feel like I got duped, because like, just like when you said before, like I'm here for the super badass learning how to like use my brain in stressful decisions. And like, I was like, I'm sitting here, my homework is meditating, seriously? And so, yeah, it was, and so that was like, I have to learn all of the science behind this. And that was like
Yes.
my journey into neuroscience and what I'm going to
Yes.
include with Blue Side Yoga, because I think it's really critical that all of us
100%.
that are skeptical about all of this, we have to learn the why before I can be like, Eric, you seem stressed. Let's go meditate for a little bit. Like,
Right.
what? No, don't go
Not
tell
gonna
me to
do that.
meditate.
No.
Yeah.
No, totally. No, I mean, and I want to tease on one thread about you going and seeking the mental health support, because this is really important for some people to hear. Not everybody has this experience, but from the intake form, as I call it, for like coming on the show, you mentioned that you actually had a really positive experience, that it did not derail your career. Because so many people are afraid that, like, if I go to my admin, or if I go to EAP, or if I go to whatever, that my career is going to be over. Kind of like you said, that you had that fear, but that wasn't your actual reality. And I know that some people do have bad experiences with this, but I also want to really shine lights on positive experiences going through that. So it didn't derail your career. You had a very successful career after that moment, right? Can you just touch on that a little bit, just so people can hear that message too?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, spoiler alert here, I've gone multiple times for help. It wasn't just the one time after Dunker where my career was threatened, but I'll start with that one. So, that was a very specific incident, and that is basically like, after talking with psychiatrists, that is what they want to address. Is, so it's generally in your life, it's a single issue or something, some stressor that you need to overcome. And from looking at all of this, and having gone multiple times, they're not out there to destroy your career. They're not out there to take your wings if you're a pilot, or take your gun and badge if you're a first responder, or take your medical, certificates away. Like,
Yeah.
they they do genuinely want to help. And the caveat to this is that there are some times that maybe your condition is so extreme that you may need to take a step back,
Sure.
and it's for your health. But it's not they're not chopping your whole career off. So it may be like, for me, for example, when I had the issue with Dunker, I didn't fly for about 4 months, and I was crushed by that.
Yeah, of
But
course.
it gave me the time to be like, there are some significant things in my life that I need to improve on right now, and I do need to work on this psychological aspect. And then looking at it too, we were talking about decision making earlier. I probably wasn't in the best mind to be in charge of a crew in an aircraft at that point. And so you have to think that too. Like, if you're a medical first responder, like, am I making the clearest decision that someone can, like, I'm affecting this person's life? Or the same thing with, law enforcement or firefighting. Like, you have to be in your best physical and mental conditions for the work that we do. And that's just not negotiable. So sometimes, just like when you're sick and you got to take a break, it's the same. If I'm having an issue that's going on in my life that's affecting my nervous system so much and affecting my decision making, you got to step back and heal that for a minute. And it's not always as extreme as, like, I'm going to take you off the force or take you out of flying for months at a
Sure.
time. Like, the other time that I went for help was when I was on the peer support program, and we did have an officer suicide. And I was the first responder to that, to help support the family and help go through everything. And at the end of those 2 weeks, it had just taken such a mental toll on me that I was like, you know what? I got to hit pause. I actually do need to see a therapist to talk through this. And it wasn't because I was like, it was at that time where I'm like, I have the knowledge to know that the human mind is not supposed to just suck it up and drive on through this. You can't. You absolutely
Yeah.
cannot. So those are the
Yeah.
types of things where it's like, big traumas in life, death of a loved one, even just moving, any kind of, like, those big stressors that happen.
Yeah.
Talk to someone about it. And even if you are an agency where you have to report this, they are so supportive. Like, I reported to the air marshals that, hey, I'm getting therapy for XYZ. They're like, cool, no problem. Just let us know if whatever gets worse. And that's all they wanted to know.
Right. right?
So it was,
Yeah. And so I'm curious, like, just again, teasing these threads a little bit more. So the first time you said you didn't fly for 4 months afterwards and you were crushed by that. Like, and that was before you were on the self-awareness journey of yoga, mindfulness, meditation. And so that's honestly the biggest fear for most people when they do seek help. And I really like the way that you just said it. Like, if you're sick, you take time off, your body's going to shut it down for you. I mean, Olivia's sick. Her body literally shut herself down for the last 48 hours. Like, she's been in bed sleeping. And same with our little kid girl. And so mental health when you're talking about it, I was like, oh man, I'm thinking about it from, like, whether we like it or not, a lot of folks in public safety really admire professional athletes. Okay, they not to equate mental health with tearing an ACL or tearing an Achilles tendon, but those men and women then are not playing soccer, or not playing football, or not playing basketball for a year and rehabbing through it, hoping that they can regain to build their career and go forward, and people become all-stars and Hall of Famers after those devastating physical injuries. And so it's kind of that same situation. You know darn well it affects they're crushed after that injury. I mean, you can see it happen playing out on the field real time, like how devastated these people are. And so to that kind of point, like, you equated it kind of similarly, like you were crushed, but you're able to go through the process, get your wings back, get back flying again 4 months later. And so that journey was before your awareness journey. So how did you and that's where most of the folks listening to this podcast are realistically. They haven't begun the yoga, mindfulness, meditation journey. So what tool or mentorship or guidance had you just learned through life to to help you with those 4 months? And then I'm going to give you incredible kudos and props on your second time. So what was your after and maybe I'm digging a little bit too much, but I just want to help people, guide them through this mental health journey, because it is a journey, like, as you said. So
yeah.
so you went so they said, okay, you're not going to fly for a bit. For a lot of people,
Yeah, it was
yet another straw on the proverbial camel's back. Like,
exactly. And we identify ourselves, like our self-identity, and you like talked about this in the very beginning almost, of like, who am I? And military and first responders, we are like, we identify with what we do instead of who we are. And so when I was like, I'm a pilot, like, this is who I am, and not thinking of this is what I do. But my goal through getting back to those or getting through those 4 months was, I'm a pilot. This is what I love. I need to get back to my unit, to my people, to my, and it was very, I'm going to say at that point, it probably wasn't as health oriented to me versus goal oriented in getting back to where I was.
Yeah,
but
it was goal oriented, mission driven still, right?
Yeah.
You could lean on that. I'm going to get back. I'm going to get back. Yeah.
And just like the analogy with the injury, like, in order to do that, I have to heal, and I have to give myself the time to fix whatever is going on in my life, so I can be the best that I can when, those 4 months are done, or whenever, I think it was like six mental health sessions or whatever it was. But the one thing I have to bring up before we go to the second time through is, when I teach neuroscience and I teach about stress and trauma, I correlate, and it's true, this is exactly what it is, that stressful event, or the chronic stress that's happening, or that one big traumatic event, is an injury to your nervous system.
100%.
It's an injury. So anything with the body, you have to let the injury heal. Right. And it takes an average, and this is where the 4 months kind of come in, and it all makes sense a little bit less statistically, but 60 to 90 days is how long it takes you to heal from a traumatic event, so that you are not getting mental health effects from it, like service-related stress disorders, PTSD, that sort of thing. And so when's the last time that you had a traumatic event as a first responder or a military personnel, and you're like, yep, I need the next 60 to 90 days to recover from this before I go back to work? Like, no, we don't get that.
No, you get 24 to 48 hours and you're back on the truck, or whatever it is.
If you're lucky, yeah. So that's the other thing of, like, we need to start thinking, and I think for our communities, thinking of stress and trauma as an injury to your nervous system, is the way we need to think about this stuff, because we still don't like talking about mental health and mental health problems.
Right.
So if it's geared towards the conversation of, you know, what we're like trying to heal from, putting it in those words makes it much more, I don't know if palpable is the right word, but much more understandable to be like, I know what's going on and I need a break.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest disservices, honestly, historically, for members of the military and public safety community is the fact that clinicians originally called this post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, that D at the end is the sticking point, because everybody's like, well, I don't want to have a disorder like that, you know. And so there's like the it's not even newer, but a lot of people are now calling it post-traumatic stress injury, PTSI, instead, because that's actually more apt definition of what's going on. You have a post-traumatic stress injury that you can heal from, that you can overcome. It's not a disorder that you're stuck with and labeled with for the rest of your life. Like, you can go through some of the processes to heal your body, mind, and nervous system, and get your wings back, and get your firearm back, and get your badge back, and be the person that you want to be, and not just back to that same level, but to thrive afterwards. I mean, we're now learning about post-traumatic growth. You're talking a lot about the neuroscience. We are very, you know, with yoga first responders, we are 100% rooted in neuroscience from the yoga world and the mindful meditation world. Quite frankly, we're lucky that neuroscience is finally able to tell us what the hell is going on inside of our bodies. Like, it's not by accident that these tools have been around for 5,000 plus years. The science is just now becoming nuanced enough to show us what is going on and why it's working. And so we're living in the golden age of neuroscience around what we do, which is super fantastic. And yet we go into agencies such as your former agencies with stacks of textbooks and stacks of data and stacks of research studies and stacks of testimonials, and it's not enough. Not
right.
Still can't get people to buy into it from the true, literally buy into it with the dollars and cents, because, oh, that's all great, but it's not for my people, is usually what it comes down to. It's like, man, like, you're killing me, Smalls, doesn't say. Like, I literally just dropped 20 textbooks on your desk showing like why this is exactly for your people, actually. Thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of research that we now have surrounding this stuff. And so it's just, it's fast. It's mind numbing, but I think it honestly resolves around the disservice of prior generations calling things post-traumatic stress disorder, start saying that this is not fully understanding the science behind all of these injuries and how to move them forward. And so that's what we're fighting against. And I think we resonate on that. I do want to then take to the second time, and because at this point you're in your yoga mindfulness meditation journey and working actually with an Army clinician he was AGR through the Army Guard in Iowa. And he's like, I love this protocol because we're rolling it out on a mandated basis so that all of our service members get some of this training, because most of them don't even know that they're off baseline, because they don't have the awareness to know that something has shifted internally on the physical, mental, emotional side, because it just becomes part of the parlance of, as you say, carry on, drive on, push on, or we just culturally accept that we all just go home and drink whiskey all night long or whatever. You know, I mean, all of the same common behaviors that we all have witnessed. And don't hear that wrong. I do love my glass of whiskey. I love it, but I understand why I'm drinking it. I understand why it's there, but it's not drinking to the point of blacking out. It's not drinking to numb feelings. It's honestly, I really enjoy the taste and like to sample different whiskeys. Like, I enjoy that aspect of it. So, but not to the point of, at one point in my life, like we all were probably, shift got over at 7 a.m. and we go to the local bar at 7:05 and just spend the entire day there. That is not normally accepted behavior from general populations, you know?
No, it's not at all. And it's so prevalent through everything. And before I started my mindfulness journey with that I was exactly like off shift, off work. Cool. Let's go, open the wine or whatever, or the same thing, because being a federal air marshal, you get off mission and it's like, where am I in the world? I don't know. I don't know what time it is. Doesn't matter. I need to try to sleep. So let me down some, alcohol that I picked up from wherever and try to sleep and then pop that Ambien and then do this and then try to wake up for a flight. Like it's a mess.
It is. It's a
It's a
mess. It's a
mess.
hot mess. We're hot messes as people at that point. And so the second time you went through your journey, you had been in your yoga mindfulness meditation journey, and so you then had tools, self-awareness tools, to notice that, like, okay, I've been through this shit couple of weeks, like rough couple of weeks. I'm off baseline. Like I'm recognizing that inside myself, and so therefore I know that I need to take the next step, which is to X, Y, and or Z. And so, do you feel like your self-awareness practices allowed you to recognize that in yourself faster that second time?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And so here's also the thing, kind of going back to like our missions as military and first responders, because there are times in our careers where we do have to suck it up and drive on, and that's a very
Absolutely.
Army term, but it's the same in every service.
100%.
But what the problem is we can't live in suck it up and drive on. Like that can't be a lifestyle, that can't be a motto, and that's what that kind of turns into. So understanding that and knowing that, working up to, having the second time where I was just mentally exhausted and knew I needed help, I was able to self, not, my coping skills were on par with what I needed with what was going on in my life. So meditation, yoga, and living mindfully has just become habitual for me. And when I got to that point where I knew going into it with such a major traumatic event, that one, that was an injury to my nervous system. Two, I had to suck it up and drive on for those 2 weeks, because that's the mission. That's someone's life. That's, like there's no
Yeah.
point to, it's not myself right now. This is everything for someone else. And there are points and times where we have to be like that, but it cannot be forever. So as soon as it was over, I knew the signs and symptoms within myself that this was something that I could not yoga or meditate away.
Yeah. Right.
Like I needed to talk to someone about this, and it needed to be a professional. And so here's one of the other things that I always recommend to my clients or whoever I'm working with: find a therapist now when you don't have a problem, because it's not like you can just randomly go to a doctor and be like, oh yeah, no, that they'll generally, cardiologist will give me the same information. Like, no, you have to find someone that you click with, and finding someone that you click with during the time that you are actually having a personal crisis is not the time to go shopping.
Right.
So to have someone just kind of on board, or maybe you do like a once a year checkup, or just, mental health checkup or something like that. But that is one of the things that absolutely saved me during that time, because I could call her and schedule an appointment and be like, listen, next 6 weeks, I need 6 sessions to get through what I'm going through. And
Yeah.
it helped.
So,
And I didn't lose work, didn't lose,
yeah.
like everything was just, it was so helpful. And I came back stronger because of that.
Yeah, and how powerful is that? And we often say too, like, we will never replace talk therapy. Like, we will never replace clinicians in the world. But what we can work towards is giving you, through yoga of mindfulness meditation, are tools that you, after then you go through therapy, you still have tools that will continue to work through this. And this is where the clinician from the Army actually said, he's like, I love it because we can actually get people to realize that they're off baseline to start with. They can come in, do talk therapy with me. I can then send them home and give them, say, breath work or mindfulness exercises they've already been given between sessions, which will help their nervous system re-regulate. And then once we're done with talk therapy with our sessions, which is the goal, I can give them homework to keep doing their breathwork, mindfulness, meditation techniques that they've already learned before they needed help. So we're basically giving us tools as clinicians to help folks before, during, and after therapy sessions. And we've talked, it was earlier in the show, our whole mission is to move this into the proactive mental health wellness realm. So we'll never save everybody from falling in the river. We'll never save that. But if we can prevent a few people from falling into the river, upstream a little bit, if we can move upstream, awesome, great. Because then we don't have so many people floating downstream that are needing to be caught by the safety nets of our peer support teams, our CISM teams, all the teams that are in place, the EAPs and emergency talk therapy, even like you said, proactive therapy sessions to make sure that you are having preventative maintenance in that category again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're not taking away or detracting from any of those, but we're really there to help support and those other modalities. And so if our audience is obviously somewhat interested in yoga, but know that as powerful as this tool is, you will still find moments in your life where, yeah, you can't solve it on your own. And so that's where you need to have those resources in your pocket, already ready to go. Not flipping through your pocket manual like, okay, who do I call now? Because
Yeah.
that's not the right time, but that's usually when we look for it. So powerful message there, honestly, for folks to hear.
And going back to our injury analogy,
Yeah.
it's like, well, some injuries I can take care of at home. Some injuries I need to go get some stitches for. Like, you
Well,
just,
it's
you
so
gotta assess where you're
well,
at.
yeah, and it's such a powerful message. I mean, Olivia, so Yoga First Responders founded by Olivia before we met, actually, but she's a yoga practitioner for a long time, and so she shares a story like about how had a pretty major went through a pretty major medical incident many at this point probably 8-10 years ago, uh, but she was very disappointed that she actually went back to her mentor in the yoga lineage and said, I didn't do enough handstands or shoulder stands because that was supposed to help like clear this energy and not have this kind of issue. And her teacher from the East said, well, know that there's a time and place for Western medicine. Like you can use your Eastern medicine and that kind of stuff, but what a wonderful time to be living where we do have the advances of Western medicine to be able to support what we've known for all these decades and generations. And so, yeah, to know that like Eastern medicine, wisdom, ancient wisdom philosophies are there. And thank goodness we have Western medicine that we can go through talk therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, all those things on top of it. And so we can really get the benefit of both in that perfect marriage. So it's that, yeah, no one to get stitches and no one it's okay to like put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah, I can yoga away this problem. I can't yoga away the other problem.
Right. Totally. So I'm moving over to your website here a little bit because there's some fascinating stuff on there. People that have listened to me talk, they know that I'm huge into Stoic philosophy, and I don't know if you which one of the key tenets of Stoic philosophy is the obstacle is the way, and a lot of the paintings around that is like a giant mountain standing in front of you, and so you have to go through the obstacle to get to the other side. Essentially, is what that is. Or if you see the obstacle as a burden or as a barrier, you'll never get anywhere in life. Instead, look at the obstacle as the way. And so, it's actually all the way down at the bottom of your website. You talk about let the mountains become your inspiration, catalyst for growth and sanctuary, and like that is your spin, whether you realize it or not, on that obstacle is the way metaphor from Stoic philosophy. And so I'm pulling us into what you're doing with Blue Side Yoga, obviously. And so why is that saying important? Like I know because I've been to your website, but I'm excited to hear you. I'm excited to hear you talk about these literal mountains in this case and what you're doing, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the whys and the hows, but to give me the inspiration on this.
It is just it. I have always been fascinated with mountains, and this was before it became like my mindfulness thing, but I've always loved a physical challenge, and that just kind of like drove who I am and who I was at different phases of my life. And the mountains have such, it's like, okay, I'm going to go off tangent a little bit here, go off on a little tangent, but like my favorite yoga pose is mountain pose. And it's such a simple, and it's the most, you stand there, but you stand there tall. And like every time that I teach that pose, or every time I'm doing it myself, I'm like, you stand tall like the mountain. You're not, like you're grounded, you're strong, you're reaching up, your head is reaching up to the sky, like you're feeling all of these elements, and nothing can move the mountain. Like you can withstand storms, you can withstand, the rain showers, and at the end of it, and when the sun comes out, like you're the first to see the sun because it's you're the tallest thing out there, and you're the first to see the storm clouds coming, and you can prepare for it. And like, so it just, the mountains just speak to me so much with that. And being able to work through your own mountains, and I love to do it physically, of course, but this is mentally as well, with anything that is coming along in your life. But if you have that aspect about it of being the mountain, and then when you're working through your own troubles with it, and accepting that challenge, and knowing that even like maybe this mountain that you're working with, it's not going to move. So you work with it and you work around it, or you make it work for you, or you accept that it's there. And finding peace and harmony with that mountain, whether it's physical, mental, or you're the mountain yourself, like that is what will finally bring you peace, is when you realize who you are, and what you're dealing with. And so we all are the mountain, but we all deal with mountains. So
no, it's not, that's not a tangent at all. And I actually really like that, because I tell people all the time that the hardest posture that they will ever do in my yoga class is mountain pose. Stand still and breathe. Like and so, because like they're fine, like honestly most people are fine. Like we drop out emotions because of the way that the body and mind work through the yoga process. But for people in our culture, warrior cultures, public safety cultures, stand still and breathe is not something that they have ever been instructed to do. And then once all of a sudden you're there long enough, you start to realize that of the internal work that needs to be done. Like we're fine once we get into high plank, low plank, like sun salutation drills, because then we can start then if you don't have the proper teacher, the proper guide, we let the ego take over, and it's pretty easy just to get into the movement of it. But to stand still and breathe scares a lot of people, and it's such a powerful spot to be. And so I really, really like that that's your favorite posture to teach, because it's mine too, but it's also, let's be honest, one of the hardest for the students to truly access and get into, because it's so layered.
It is so layered. And part of the reason that I love teaching that, and I teach just like you guys do, the neuroscience approach when I'm talking about this.
Yeah.
And all of us in our community, our nervous system is stuck on high.
Right.
And so we want to keep moving. We want to keep doing, we do the fast breathing, and we do this just subconsciously now, because that's the way that our nervous systems are stuck. We don't know how to engage that parasympathetic nervous system and draw the body back down to a baseline. So when you're stuck standing there in mountain pose, it gets really uncomfortable for us in the body, because we have to move and we have to do, at our nervous system core, we want to be moving and doing something because that feels natural, and we always do that. Like, and so that's, I love, you can tell the people that are like really struggling through it, and some that are like calm with doing it, but most of the time the fidgeting starts immediately.
Yes. Absolutely. And then they get real pissed at me because I'm the teacher, and all we're doing, we tell them before it even happens, like, this is going to happen. Like, yoga at the end of the day, we say, is radical self-study. And so when I start to call out that you're fidgeting and you don't even know that you're fidgeting or moving, you're going to get real pissed at me, because you're going to be like, I'm not, but all I'm doing is holding up the mirror to what's happening to you and what's going on there. And I tell people I've got broader shoulders than it looks like, because I've had people pissed at me because I've literally shown, like, they don't even know that they're moving until you hold that mirror back to them and be like, this is your subconscious, this is your mind, your nervous system trying to take back control. Because whether you like it or not, for the first time maybe in your entire life, you're actually putting your hands on the steering wheel of your mind and nervous system and taking control of it. And it's not happy, and it's fighting back, and it's going to fight back hard. But believe it or not, you can take control of this machine that is your body, and guide it to where you want it to go. And so I love this work because of that. And so I know that resonates with you from your passion about mountain pose, quite frankly. You have, listen to your site, and I couldn't agree more. You have 3 problems that you've identified. I'm sure I'm going to test you. I have your website pulled up. I hope that you are at the top of your mind.
No.
Oh no,
No,
the
I know
spotlight is
you're gonna
on.
ask me this. Yeah.
You've
No.
talked about problem one extensively
Yep.
throughout
Suck
this.
it
You've
up and
said
drive on.
suck it up and drive on. Those are literally the 6 words on for problem one.
Yep.
Again, problem two and number three, cannot agree more with them. So, what are the other two problems that you're working to solve
Yeah, so the
through your
second
program?
big problem that we have is this lifestyle that we have that just leaves us to a point where we are just physically and mentally depleted. And we don't know what to do about it and don't know where to go. So we just keep doing the same things or developing these, these maladaptive coping mechanisms like we talked about earlier. Like as soon as I get home, I gotta crack open the bottle, stuff like that. So that's my second big problem with
Yep.
this is we aren't taught how to live this lifestyle and do our jobs really effectively, but also be able to take care of ourselves and not burn out so that we know that we can serve our communities our best and be there for our teammates and do all the things we need to do. So that's our second big problem.
Totally agree. Third?
Yeah. And then the third is once once someone sees that you're having a problem, they're like, yeah, just go ahead and get help. You need to get help. We don't know what that means.
Yeah. What the hell
The
does that mean?
average,
Okay.
right? Like when you don't learn about the neuroscience that's going on in your body, you don't even know how to get help or what you need help with. And the problem with when we don't know what's going on in our body and we go to get help and we just go to the random psychiatrist or psychologist, what often happens is because of the whole Western medicine thing, we look for a pill to solve our problems.
Right.
And that goes on another whole, like sometimes, I'm not going to lie, like there are mental health things that, like I mentioned a couple of times in this, you can't yoga away. So maybe you actually have such an issue where you do need an antidepressant for a while or whatever your doctor, prescribes for you. But most of the time, getting help doesn't mean you have to be on antidepressants or you're going to lose your job or you're going to lose, your badge and gun or you're going to lose your wings or whatever it is. So yeah, the third one is we're told to get help, but we don't know. We don't know what to do.
Absolutely. And there's this huge misnomer too that's like, oh, if I go get help and I get put on an antidepressant, I'm going to be on it for the rest of my life. No, you can actually use that as a tool that it's intended to be, which is to get immediate corrective action so that you can then work through, give yourself just enough, I like to say, to give yourself just enough space with whatever trauma injury that you're dealing with so that you can actually work through that trauma or injury. And then believe it or not, you can actually work your way back off antidepressants as well. Like it can be a short-term tool. It doesn't have to be a lifelong tool. And so that's, again, for one of those people just like, oh, I don't want to be on, I don't even know, Xanax, I guess, for the rest of my life or whatever. They're like, you don't have to be. Like, if your doctor does prescribe it, like, maybe take it for a couple of weeks, get that space, but continue to work on whatever led you to have to be put on that medicine in the first place, and then get back off of it. Like, it's not a take it for like it. And that's more of a personal rant than
No, let's go back
use it as a tool, not a crutch.
Yes, like let's go back to our injury illness. Like if I have a sinus infection, it's not clearing. I'm going to need some antibiotics for a little bit, and then I get off of them.
Yeah, totally.
Once you're better, it's all good,
Absolutely. So you then, I'm excited. This is where I want you to how do you guide people through those three problems? Like, I'm excited about this because I too have always loved the literal mountains. I'm a mountain person. Some people are seemingly ocean people. Some people are seeming mountain people. I'm a mountain person. But actually, one of the reasons why we chose to live in the greater Albuquerque, Santa Fe area is because we're at the foothills of the Sandia Mountains. We moved out of Colorado, which has the big mountains, but even in Denver, you're still 2.5, 3 hours away from the actual getting like feet into the big mountains. So here,
yeah, I live in Denver, so yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I did know that. So we used to live in Castle Rock until about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And moved from Castle Rock down to the greater Albuquerque, Santa Fe area. So
nice.
That's where we were at. So we're even a little bit further than the Denver metro. Like add an extra 45 minutes onto it to get through Denver. And so, but I love just being able to look at the mountains, right, from where I was at, because even that gives you kind of that sense of awe, that sense of wonder. Some of my best experiences and awe-inspiring experiences and grounding experiences have been in different mountainous settings. I can think back to some in particular. Uh, and so you have found a way to take first responders on epic guides, epic trips, epic life-changing experiences, I would imagine, is what your feedback and testimonials probably say, is that this has changed my life. And so how did you come into starting this? So having that passion, you already said have always been impressed by the mountains. You've had the yoga experience. So now you're starting to combine the two of them together, it seems like. Created Blue Side Yoga, and now you're taking that and taking folks on epic adventures. So take us through that timeline, and so how you are working through your modalities to solve those big three that you've identified.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, there's so much that goes with this. So let me let me do my best to keep this as relevant and on point to your question. So we talked about the three big problems that we have, and these things don't get solved overnight. It takes months to learn the science. It takes months of really, really focusing on yourself and really being honest with yourself about the habits and the things that aren't going well and the things that you want to fix. And then being really motivated to have the momentum to continue on that course to want to be able to fix it. So what I have done with Blue Side Yoga, and I call our journeys Operation Himalayan Passage, because we're going to the Himalayas, duh. Like the next is like,
Amazing.
it is this operation that you're addressing everything in your life, and you want things to be better, and you want to come out of this, emerge. You want to go through this passage as the best version of yourself, that you can continue this on throughout your entire life while giving yourself just an epic journey to work on. So really what I do is I break it into, so I have my immersive adventure method, which is 3 phases. So the first thing that we do is like we discover. And so this isn't just like you sign up for a trek and you're going to come trek with me for a couple of weeks in the Himalayas and we're going to do all the work in 2 weeks. Like that's absolutely not how this can work. Like you can go on a fantastic adventure, but
there are companies out there that do that, right?
Like exactly. And I'm happy to help you.
Yeah, right.
Right. But the specific thing for our community,
different intentions here.
Yes. And to address what is going on in our communities is why I went through this immersive adventure and these 3 phases. So the first phase is like, first of all, you discover that you want to do this, but I have a 12-week online course set up for all the trekkers that go through the neuroscience of the nervous system. You learn about the brain, you learn about your own habits, you learn how to meditate, you learn what mindfulness is, you learn basic yoga. And this is all your self-paced deal for this 12-week course. Sure. And what it is broken into about, I'm going to say average about 15 minutes a day. The idea is for you to do these daily tasks, and it may be a lesson, it may be a journal exercise, it may be something, but it's all related to help you start building the habit to know that mindfulness cannot just be something that you practice once a month and you're going to get better. Like this is stuff that we have to ingrain and learn every single day in order to build, the non-reactive nervous system that we want. Like we want to be able to have control over this, and you have to practice it.
Just like any other basic skill you're going to learn in academy, like, right? It's the basics.
Exactly.
You have to learn the basic skill over and over and over again before you're going to be able to draw your firearm out of your holster every time.
Yep.
I mean, to break it down that simply for folks, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. So like, maybe 3 of the days of that week that we're working on are different meditations, but I offer a bunch of different meditation styles because not everyone's going to connect to maybe focused attention meditation. Like maybe they're more of a, box breathing, or maybe, like combining all of that kind of stuff, but it's more of like a sample of like, hey, what works for me? What do I really like? So that's the first thing, discovery. You go through a lot of self-discovery. You go through a lot of learning process and all of that. So once those 12 weeks are done, then we go into a 6-week mountain athlete course. So I get questions all the time of like, do I have to be a high altitude trekker? Do I have to live in Colorado? Do I, like all this crazy stuff, or like, I live at sea level. I don't think I can do this. So we have a 16-week mountain athlete course, which is basically like couch to the high altitude trekking preparation sort of deal. And it's just it's a 16-week easy workup. And continuing with that, we do mobility and yoga throughout that course. And then after that, you go to Nepal, and it's kind of like the reward for all of the work that you've done. And you meet up with everybody else that's been doing this course. And we just have such a blast. Like, so everyone just meshes because we're all of the same mold, basically.
Yeah, you give them a common language and a common mission, right? So they can immediately have that to rely on. Let alone the fact they're probably mostly or all from the public safety world of some measure.
Yeah, and that's specifically what the group is for. So so the deal is for you to sign up for the trek, you're either a military member, former retired veteran, and any of that sort of deal, active duty, whatever, and then a first responder. And our definition of first responder is super broad. So it's not just like, the traditional firefighting, EMT, law enforcement, stuff like that you think of. I'm talking like anybody that has to deal with critical decision making. So we got cybersecurity experts, we got things that you just like FEMA or any kind of like emergency response that you don't really think of. So, and then the deal is, because I know it's such a incredible experience for people to go there, as long as you're signed up, like you are the primary veteran or first responder, then you can bring a friend or spouse or boyfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
As long as they're an adult and they can handle the conversations that we're going to have on the trail, because you know how that goes.
That's right.
So we want to make it a positive experience for those that support us also.
Right.
So you go on your epic adventure, and then the idea behind that is you just have built this momentum, because it's not just a trip. It's you have worked so hard to get where you are. And after that adventure, the idea is to, be able to have this incorporated into your lifestyle, so that, mindfulness is part of your life, and healthy coping mechanisms are part of your life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a really powerful message in the way you've built and structured this program, and that you said it, the trip is actually the reward for the work. Like, you're actually training the work and the process before, and then you get to like kind of like taste the sweetness of it. Because that's one of the hard parts about what we do, is that like this is a continuing journey. Like, you're going to have to continue to work on your body, mind, and nervous system, because every day you will be taking new hits along this journey of life. And there's really never any kind of like pinnacle point of reward. It's like, I'm just in the mud trudging through this, but you've built in a reward, as you said, and it's the trip to Nepal, and it's this 2-week 10-day trek with your peers. And so I really, really like that you've set this up as, I'm rewarding the work and the process you've already put in, the habits you've already built, rather than getting the reward up front and just saying like, oh, I went on a 2-week trek, I'm hoping it changes my life. No, you've actually changed your life, whether you know it or not, before you've done it yourself. You changed your life yourself before we're going together on this hike. The trek across Himalayas is truly just the cherry on the top, honestly, at that point, because their lives are already transformed by going through the discovery and the action phases that you've put them through. So
absolutely.
Super cool. Super, super cool. So how do people find out about this program? Because it's, I'll be honest, it sounds pretty fucking cool. Like we swear on this podcast. I'm sorry, it's true.
Good.
This is cool. This is cool stuff, especially as somebody who's always been drawn to the mountains. Like, I mean, I live vicariously through the documentaries. Like, I love watching like the rock climbers, specifically like the Alex Honolds and the Hazel Finleys and their documentaries and stuff. And so someday this would be, your program, quite frankly, is right in my wheelhouse specifically. So I'm happy we got to talk about it. How does the rest of the world find out about this, find out about you, and learn and get involved?
Yeah, awesome. So I have a website. It's really simple, bluesideyoga.com. And in that website, there's a section where it's called Operation Himalayan Passage. And that shows us all of the current adventures that we have. So I've got all my 2024 adventures up right now. Most of them are sold out, which is good for me. But
it shows that there's huge demand for this. I mean, that's incredible. Like, So if you're listening to this, don't be disappointed that they're sold out. Like, know that like what Sarah's built is working and people are wanting this. So see this as your opportunity. Like, I want to do this even more. So get on the wait list. I see there's a wait list option.
Yeah, so we got waitlist options, and there's also a contacts section on the page. And so I do a lot of behind the scenes stuff for my subscribers. So you can go onto the web, or you can get onto my subscriber list through that contact section to keep in touch. And you will be those people that are on there are the first to know when my 2025 treks will come out, which is going to be later this spring. And then also the other stuff that I mentioned, the 12-week mindfulness course and the 16-week mountain athlete, my goal is to release those as standalone courses as well. So if you're like, I can't make it to Nepal or it's sold out or something like that, you don't have to wait and, work on your own mindset. You can have your own adventure while you're, doing this on your own. So, but yeah, bluesideyoga.com, and I'll have all of the stuff updated once we get our 2025 treks up there. So 2025 is going to be a wild year. I can just tell you that right now.
Oh man, I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be cool.
Do you have any socials folks can follow you on?
Yep. Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all under Blue Side Yoga.
Easy as that. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Don't overcomplicate it. Love it.
Nope. All the same.
No. Sarah, this has been a fantastic conversation. I mean, it's very clear that your mindset, it's by no accident that like you stumbled across yoga for first responders in your previous roles, and that you're drawn to this community and what you're talking about, because we are cut from very similar cloths, if not the same cloth, from your mindset, your perspective on life, and how you've navigated it, and what we teach and preach at Yoga for First Responders to those in our communities, personally and professionally, for both Olivia, myself, and everybody else on our team. So I want to thank you for taking the time straight off the Iditarod Trail, essentially, for all intents and purposes, flew straight into Denver, off the trail, to get this episode recorded. Not quite, folks, but not far off.
I was going to say, that might be a little exaggeration, but we made it happen.
There may have been like a 10-day break in there, but
maybe. Like I'm still editing videos for the trail, so it's still pretty new.
Physically you're in Denver. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you're still in Alaska. So
100%, yeah.
Right, yeah. So full transition back home hasn't quite happened quite yet. So that's where I'm going to be a little free with that explanation, but no, not quite exactly. But I like to have a little bit of fun with it. Why not build up the hype, right? I mean,
exactly, right?
Got to be our own hype people at some point.
Right. Well, I'm going to guide you in Nepal. Like I got, like the whole superhero thing. You got to keep it going for me.
Honestly, like I can't. I'm going to put this on a list of to do.
Please, it'd be great
to do in short order. We're going to stay connected. I have no doubt about that after this episode. I have some other questions I'd love to ask you offline at some point, but I just want to truly say thank you for doing your intake form literally that literally happened on the Iditarod Trail. Actually,
that actually did. Yes. That's true.
That happened actually on the Iditarod Trail. And I appreciate you taking the time to do that. It just helps these conversations and help feel like we get to know you better before we start the conversation. So we can just hit it straight off. And Sarah, it has been a serious pleasure to get to know you better over the last hour and be able to support your mission in Blue Side Yoga, and a debt of gratitude. So I appreciate you, and thank you for showing up for the episode.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here, and it really is. It's kind of like that full circle for me, because I'm so supportive of what you all do in your mission. And this was, obviously years before we met. So
yes,
it's really big for me to be here and be on your podcast. So totally. I love it.
Well, I appreciate that. Folks, tune in. Hope you've stuck around. Check out Sarah's website, bluesideyoga.com. It's going to be in the show notes along with her socials. Get signed up for that wait list. You don't want to miss out on the 2025 epicness that is about to get dropped. Like, this is a mic drop moment for 2025, and you can be the first to know. So go check out her website.
Hey, before we go, I want to remind you that training your mental and physical health is incredibly important, especially for those working in high-stress jobs like first responders.
And if you're interested in learning more about yoga for first responders, visit yogaforfirstresponders.org for our on-demand training app, online course platform, in-person training, and more.
Like this podcast, subscribe, and give us a great review. We are so happy to have you part of the YFFR mission.